Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. The show is designed to give you solutions to your day-to-day management and leadership problems. It's hosted by Matthew Haddock, a frontline manager and leader with over 25 years of experience. If you're ready, then let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. This week's show, we're going to talk about regulating your emotions as a leader. You don't need to be a robot, but you don't always have to wear your heart on your sleeve. So without any more delay, let's get on with this week's show. Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. I hope, as ever, you are doing well and your team or yourself are performing to the best of your abilities in and outside of work. So this week I want to talk about the idea of regulating. You could have regulations, but it'd be a bit weird, wouldn't it, going through some formal, process of voting on how you regulate your emotions. But anyway, you have to make sure that you can get your emotions under control as a leader. First off, this sounds really bizarre, but you are going to have emotions. You are a human, and I have said this a number of times to people. We're not robots, we are humans. So you are going to get points where you are going to have emotions. Quite a lot of emotions, if you're honest. But anyway, let's get back to your normal day-to-day work. How do you regulate the emotions? It's so easy to try and lose your shit, I bet, some days. You can come in and just think to yourself, how has this gone so wrong? Or why has that person done this? Or what is the purpose of that role or that department? And it is so much easier to wear your emotions on your sleeve because it's easy to be that person, to come in and be emotional. And I'm not talking about in a negative stereotype, breaking down into tears, but showing your emotions. And the difference is that your emotions have obviously some part to play in what you do. You've got to move the idea of emotions being a negative thing, because people think emotions negative. Actually think of it as a positive thing. Passion is good. Caring and being comfortable with your way of you being you is great. There's nothing wrong with that. All we're talking about today is the fact that you've got to watch out for the ups and downs when you're in a leadership position, because it's easy to be inconsistent at work with your emotions. If you're going to really just have a roller coaster of emotions when you walk in, the first thing is that the team around you will have no idea what to face, what's coming in. If you're a leader and, one day you're chatting and you're bouncing around and you missed a, Mr. or Mrs. kind of connection and, you want to know this. And the next day you just sat in your cubicle, not talking. They're not going to know where you are. So when I talk about this idea of regulating your emotions, it's not about getting rid of them. It's about being consistent with them. It's about being consistent at work, because it's easy to be inconsistent at work, which drives all sorts of negative behaviours. You've got to be careful to not be too unemotional. As I said in the intro, you're not a robot, so you can't be too cool and absolutely kind of almost not there, because people are not going to bond with you. And we're social animals. We need to have a bond with that person. We need to know that person has something outside his work. They're not just going to be a data analysis kind of person who sits in this box and just pushes out numbers. You can find that in certain trades that are very good at that. They do maybe miss the human side. I remember coming on some calls pretty recently, and there were a lot of financial people on the call, and they went through the whole meeting, and one guy, it was a Zoom one, so he was at home, didn't say a word, didn't say anything, just sat looking at the screen. I'm sure he was doing something else. I'm sure he wasn't actually paying much attention. But you think to yourself, well, you thought he could have engaged. I think he said hello and goodbye. That was his own input for a 45-minute meeting. Now, if I'm the boss of that company, I'd be thinking, firstly, the guy better be brilliant if he's not going to add any value to 45 minutes and just sit there staring at the screen. And also, secondly, is there an issue with that person? Is that the way he always acts? Should we be doing something with them? So just be careful of that idea of being too cool. And of course, in this day and age, it is very hard. You are expected when you're at work to have an idea of other people, which is right, and their emotions. You've got to respect their space as well, which can be difficult. If you're a manager who wants to get things done, sometimes you work a heck of a lot of pace than others. I have been told before that I can be a little bit too much. I need to slow down, show my workings out, because some people are kind of almost missing the trick. I look like I've skipped 3-4 steps. I don't usually do that, but I can take that on board and think, okay, fair enough. I can address that by being a little bit careful, especially if you're in a technical or a financial or a data-driven business. It can be very much the people in that environment are very used to a lot longer to consider. Whereas when you come from a fast-moving person that needs to make decisions quickly, then obviously in the style that I could bring maybe didn't fit to where that one was. You remember that some managers will hide their emotions massively. They will really be under a kind of almost a mask. Now, that can work for some. I'm not saying that isn't the right way. I know some really great managers that of all the people say that he's a brilliant in work, but I don't know, I can't read him. It's like his face is blank. Oh shit, her face is blank. When you got him out in a social scene, absolutely different person. They just knew, I walked through that door, this is what I'm going to be. And that's fine. It was never me. I try to be genuinely honest wherever I am. That can be good and can be bad, because obviously if you don't like the genuine side of me, then that's not going to go down great. But a lot of times people do, so that's really good. I think if you do go out of the way to hide your emotions, just be aware, because, like I said, if you're coming over too cool for school, if you like, then, you are going to have an issue with the fact that people don't see you as a person. They just see you as a figurehead almost, or a position in the business. So just be aware of that. But again, everyone is as an individual. But what we're going to talk about today is how to regulate your emotions. So if you are an emotional person, or a person who shows emotion, and most of us are, so this should really appeal to everyone, how do you control it? How do you stand there in front of a team, or in a one-to-one, or in a situation of stress, and control yourself enough to be able to deliver results, to make sure you're doing the right thing? As I said, nothing wrong with passion. That is a great thing to have. If you've got your team together and there's a deadline to hit, having the passion to say, come on guys, we've got to do this. We really need to hit these numbers. It's important, because if we don't, this is the consequences. If we don't, this is going to happen. This is something we've really got to go and do. On the reverse, though, if you are going to get a very emotional output all the time from yourself, you do need to have a little bit of a regulator. Think of it as a kettle with a whistle on it. That is a pressure relief, and there's a point where you do need to have a pressure relief valve. That can be going for a walk. So, these are comments when it comes into having an understanding of it is, do I need to relieve that pressure and go for a walk? What I want to talk about now is around the actions you can take in the short term, and then we'll get onto those more over the top kind of what do I do if something really goes actions. One of them is obviously taking a walk, but let's go through the other part of it. So first thing, if you're in a situation where your emotions are becoming high, it's normally around a disagreement. As I said, normally something hasn't happened, somebody hasn't done the job, something hasn't clicked. The department that said it was supposed to do it hasn't done it, the delivery is late, it's putting pressure on your department to make sure the stuff gets out on time because the raw materials haven't arrived, so-and-so hasn't showed up, so there's more work for your team. And these are very easy to get into an emotional state. You start getting angry, you feel your stomach churning, you kind of fight and flight. I mean, it's not normal every day, but it can become for some this kind of emotional roller coaster. And what you've got to do is, how do you control those? How do you take actions to step away from that? Well, obviously, the first one is, if you're in a position where you're getting information and it's not the information you want, please listen. Don't jump into the conclusions. Just listen first. Try to listen to what's being said. Try to understand from the other person's point of view, or the other area's point, or the other suppliers, what's happened. Is it something that can be controlled? Can you just take the time to step back and see it from their side? Relax your body. This is a bit strange, but just relax your body. You can get tense. We are programmed for this. Going back years and years and years and years, obviously we were programmed around this flight or fight idea, and that's adrenaline. And your adrenaline can get pumping. I've had phone conversations with, I don't know, Sky or Scottish Power or Power utility company, and I've got emotionally angry. I felt myself getting, the adrenaline starts to pump because you're not getting, your heart starts to pound, and really it's a discussion around a bill that's wrong, or a service that didn't work, and it's not, there's a tiger in the corner who's going to kill you, but our bodies don't know that. So when you're in there, you've got to try to relax your body. That will help you not jump to conclusions, because you're not tense and you're not jumping to conclusions. Your adrenaline will start to drop. And then, of course, your more logical brain can kick in. If it's not thinking I'm going to have to fight this tiger off or run faster than the next guy, then you start to think of what are the facts? As I said at the beginning, because you've listened, what are the facts in this? What is the consequence of this issue? Is it really serious? Or is it just something we can get round? You need the data to be your friend at this point. Okay, this raw material's late. Yeah, it's going to help. It's going to be hard for the schedule to hit, but actually we've got a little bit of time. We can get back on top of this. Let's get the team round it. Let's explain the issues. Let's push. Or let's talk to the customer, see if the date can be moved. Let's move around it. Let's do that. Take on board what's being said is really important at these points. So when you've got adrenaline flowing around and you're in this emotional, angry state, you hear it in my voice, God, I'm getting angry. You're not listening. Your brain is shutting down. The blood is going to the bits that need to be done. And it does sound very dramatic, but that is in micro what's happening every day inside your body when these little things happen and you're not regulating your emotion. So you need to take it on board and make sure that you can step away. And this is where it's going back to the idea of counting to 10. And I know it sounds like an old thing, but actually stepping back, pausing, taking time, breathing. And at this point, there is nothing wrong with going, I'm going to have a minute here. I need to process this. So I'm going to stop this call. I'm going to give you a call back in a minute, if that's all right. Or I'm just going to leave the office for a minute. Just need to get my head down here and just see where this is going, because there's some things I need to jiggle around. It's just that non-reactive state, because you can't take back if you say something inappropriately or wrong, that word. So there's nothing wrong with taking time if you need it. Then you can come back and have a positive reaction, because you need to come back, especially as a manager. You can't be the junior. If you're a junior in an office, you can sling the phone about, I can't believe this is happening. Oh, God, this is terrible. Oh, what a load of rubbish. That department's shite. This, da-da-da. You can do that. But as a manager, leader, you've got to make sure that you're aware of the ripples that you will create by being that person. You've got to be aware that your reaction, if negative, will definitely get around and resonate. So you've got to be positive. I'm not always talking about unicorns and rainbows, but you've got to be aware of it so that you don't push yourself over the edge. You've got the emotions, you've got the adrenaline, you've got the passion for the job, but you need to take time just to walk away, have a think, and then come back and talk through solutions. You've regulated your emotion, you've controlled the adrenaline, you've looked at it. Now you can talk about what can we do to get out of it. And that is a real genuine skill of a good manager, is to be able to say, okay, we've heard the drama, we've seen the data, what can we do now to get out of this? 99% of the time, it's savable. There is some times where it isn't. And that's where you put your hand up and go, okay, I can't do anything about this, or my team can't do anything about this. This is where we have to go next. But you've always got a plan. Always a plan, even if it's just escalating to the next level or speaking to the customer, or this is it. I mean, in the theatres that I deal with, there's not life and death involved in this, thankfully. There may be times where you might think to yourself, oh, this is the end of the world, but really, it's not, is it? It's not the end of the world. It's just a inconvenience, a delay. Now, you're more emotional managers, let's put it that way, I've dealt with in the past, can feel it's the end of the world. They can be very unstable, very emotional, very immature in their emotional reactions. And they can really sort of create ripples that don't need to be created. They can definitely start the hairs running down the wrong path. So if you're in a senior position, be aware that you are going to create ripples if your emotions become out of check. So let's just recap. Emotions are normal. They will be happening in your body all the time. It's normal to get really annoyed at work. It's just part of it. It shows you care. If you're not annoyed, then really sometimes it's what you do with that emotions. Can you take the time to relax your body, listen to the data, control the adrenaline, take time out if you need, check the facts, and then when you've found the facts, check the outcomes, put a plan in place. Well, your plan now is to send me some feedback, because feedback is a gift that keeps on giving. So please, if you can, just spare 5 minutes and send me an email to managermattpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to speak to you about new, old, different subjects you want me to talk around. But that's it for Manager Matt this week. Thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to this Manager Matt podcast. We hope you found it interesting, helpful and actionable. One last thing, please leave a quick review on iTunes or with your podcast provider, as it helps to spread the word of Manager Matt. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you did like anything in particular, send an email to managermattpodcast@gmail.com or visit managermatt.co.uk for more content. Feedback is a gift, so let's keep giving. See you next week.